I balanced a heavy wooden box on the passenger seat of my SUV, carefully wrapping it in a thick wool blanket so it wouldn't slide during the drive. Inside were the things I had kept safe for decades since my husband passed away. A handmade quilt, stitched by Liam's great-grandmother, my own wedding pearls, and a silver pocket watch that still ticked after 80 years. The box weighed far more than it should have, mostly because of what it meant. Tonight at my son Liam's engagement dinner, I was finally going to hand these treasures over to him and his fiancée Jessica. I left my house in upstate New York just after dawn. The November air bit at my fingers as I locked the front door. The highway stretched out ahead of me, empty and pale under a morning sky. 7 hours to their new house in Ohio. It gave me plenty of time to run through my thoughts and rehearse how I would tell the stories of each heirloom. I imagined Liam's face lighting up, remembering how he used to trace the quilt's stitching when he was a little boy. By the time I pulled into their neighborhood, the sun was sinking low, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. My lower back ached from the drive, but the excitement kept my energy up. I pictured the dining table set, glasses clinking, and the warm hum of family conversation. I parked at the curb, grabbed my coat, and lifted the wooden box carefully against my chest. I knocked on the front door. A few seconds later, it pulled open. Jessica stood there, framed by the warm hallway light, holding a glass of wine. Her smile was tight and overly polite. Liam appeared right behind her, his eyes widening in panic as he looked at the box in my arms. "Mom," Liam muttered, shifting his weight awkwardly. "What are you doing here?" "It's the engagement dinner," I replied calmly. Liam rubbed the back of his neck, refusing to meet my eyes. "Oh, that was yesterday. We decided to just do close family." I stood frozen on the welcome mat, staring at the son I had given everything to. The words hung in the cold evening air, sharp and deliberate. Close family. I glanced past his shoulder and saw Jessica's parents sitting comfortably in the living room, laughing at something on the television. I had driven 7 hours across state lines, but apparently my seat at the table was optional. "I see," I replied. My voice didn't shake. I didn't drop the box or demand an explanation. I just looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw exactly who he had become. Jessica took a sip of her wine, her expression completely unbothered. "It was just a last-minute change, Ruth. It made sense since my parents were already in town. We figured the drive would be too much for you anyway." "Right. Too much," I agreed smoothly. I adjusted the weight of the heavy wooden box against my hip. "Well, I hope you had a lovely evening." I turned around and walked back down the driveway. Liam called out a weak, "Mom, wait!" But I didn't stop. I opened my car door, settled the box back into the passenger seat, and started the engine. The drive back was pitch black. I didn't turn on the radio. The hum of the tires against the asphalt was the only sound in the cabin. I thought about the times I had dropped everything for Liam. Paying his rent when he was between jobs. Driving hours in the middle of the night when his car broke down in college. I had always been his safety net. But as the highway markers blurred past me, a quiet, solid realization settled in my chest. He didn't view me as family anymore. I was just a convenience. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the house was completely silent. It wasn't a lonely silence, though. It felt like relief. I set my keys on the entryway table, left my coat on the rack, and walked straight into the kitchen. Sitting perfectly centered on my kitchen island was a thick white binder. I pulled out a chair, flipped the binder open, and stared at the documents that would change everything. I poured myself a glass of water and sat under the warm glow of the kitchen pendant lights. The white binder was thick, filled with tab swatches and endless spreadsheets. It was the master planner for Liam and Jessica's wedding. Months ago, when they first got engaged, Liam complained about how overwhelmed they were with work. Without hesitating, I offered to help handle the logistics. That slowly turned into me fronting the deposits to secure the best dates. I flipped through the pages, scanning the receipts. The luxury venue, the premium catering package, the florist, the photographer, even the vintage string quartet Jessica absolutely had to have. Every single contract was signed by me. Every deposit was processed on my credit card. At the time, I brushed it off. I had assumed I was contributing to a celebration of our blending families. Now, staring at the grand totals, I saw it for what it really was. I wasn't a mother helping her son. I was a silent investor, funding an event I wasn't even considered close family enough to celebrate. I leaned back in my chair, tracing the rim of my glass. A strange sense of calm washed over me. I didn't feel the urge to cry or write a long emotional text to Liam about how much he hurt me. Anger is loud, but clarity is incredibly quiet. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. The numbers on the screen confirmed what the binder showed. I had poured nearly $20,000 into their perfect day, with the final balances due at the end of the month. They had taken my money, my time, and my effort, assuming I would just quietly accept being pushed to the margins of their lives. I closed the laptop with a soft click. The wooden heirloom box sat in the hallway, unopened, full of history they didn't appreciate. I checked the clock. It was too late to make any calls tonight. But tomorrow, the Bank of Mom was officially closing its doors. The next morning, I brewed a strong pot of coffee, brought my mug to the dining table, and opened the binder again. I didn't feel rushed. I moved with the steady precision of someone cleaning out a dusty attic. I dialed the first number on my list. Oakwood Estate. A cheerful voice answered. Hello, this is Ruth Hastings. I'm calling regarding the reservation for June 14th. I said, keeping my tone perfectly even. Oh yes, Mrs. Hastings. How can I help you today? Do we need to update the guest count? No, I need to cancel the reservation completely, I replied. There was a brief pause on the line. Cancel. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Just so you know, per the contract, you will lose 20% of the initial deposit, but the rest will be refunded to the card on file. I understand. Please process the cancellation and send the confirmation to my email. I hung up. It took less than 3 minutes. I crossed a neat line through the venue page in the binder. Next, I called the catering company. The manager there asked if I wanted to reschedule. I politely declined, citing personal reasons. Another line crossed out. I worked my way down the list. The florist, the photographer, the string quartet. Every single vendor had my name on the dotted line, which meant every single one answered exclusively to me. I didn't offer excuses, and I didn't complain about my son. I just treated it like the business transaction it had become. By noon, my inbox was full of cancellation receipts. I logged into my bank portal and watched the pending refunds roll in. I immediately opened a completely separate savings account, one that wasn't linked to any joint transfers I had previously set up for Liam, and routed the money there. I closed the binder, tossed it into the recycling bin, and walked out to my garden. The wedding no longer existed, and the most amusing part was that neither the bride nor the groom had a clue. 5 days passed. The weather turned colder, stripping the last leaves from the maple trees in my front yard. I spent my days organizing my greenhouse, reading by the fireplace, and enjoying the absolute quiet of my home. I didn't reach out to Liam. I didn't send a passive-aggressive Facebook message, and I didn't call my sister to vent. I just waited. I wanted to see how long it would take for my son to realize he hadn't spoken to his mother since turning her away at his front door. On Tuesday, my phone lit up with a text from him. I wiped dirt from my gardening gloves and picked it up, expecting an apology. Or at least an excuse. Instead, the screen read, "Did you find that recipe for the sweet potato casserole Jess wants her mom to make it for Thanksgiving?" I stared at the screen, a dry chuckle escaping my lips. No. Sorry about the drive, Mom. No. We should have handled that better. Just a casual request to pass along my recipe so his new close family could take credit for it. It was the absolute confirmation I needed. The guilt I had been suppressing about canceling the wedding evaporated into thin air. I didn't reply. I set the phone face down on the potting bench and went back to my ferns. Thursday morning arrived. I was sitting at the kitchen island sipping a cup of chamomile tea and looking through a catalog for kitchen renovations. I had a lot of extra funds suddenly available, and my countertops had been looking incredibly dated. Suddenly, my phone buzzed violently against the marble counter. It wasn't a text this time. It was a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, Liam's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring 3 times before sliding my finger across the green button. I brought the phone to my ear, settling comfortably into my chair. Before I could even say hello, Liam's voice came through high-pitched and frantic. "Mom, did you forget to pay for the wedding?" Liam asked, completely skipping any form of greeting. I took a slow sip of my tea. "No. My card is perfectly fine." "Why?" "Because Oakwood Estate just called me. The coordinator said the entire venue reservation was canceled. They said they tried to run the final balance and the account holder canceled it." He sounded entirely out of breath. "Did you dispute the charge by mistake?" "You need to call them right now and fix this. They're threatening to give our date to someone else." In the background, I could hear Jessica's voice, sharp and commanding. "Tell her to call the bank. Tell her to fix it." I lowered my mug back to the saucer. "I didn't dispute the charge, Liam. I canceled the reservation." The line went dead quiet for a long 3 seconds. "You... what?" Liam finally breathed out. "I canceled the reservation." I repeated, keeping my voice as calm as a gentle breeze. "And the catering, and the florist, and the string quartet." "Are you insane?" Liam yelled, dropping the helpless boy act entirely. "The wedding is in 3 months. You can't just cancel our wedding." "I didn't cancel your wedding, Liam. I canceled my financial obligations." I corrected him. "You and Jessica are more than welcome to have whatever wedding you'd like, but I won't be paying for it." "Why are you doing this?" Because I said smoothly, "Since I wasn't considered close family for the engagement dinner, I assumed it would be highly inappropriate for me to insert myself into the wedding itself. Didn't I tell you I respect boundaries?" There was a loud rustling sound on the other end, followed by Jessica snatching the phone. "Ruth!" Jessica barked. "This is incredibly petty and manipulative. You are ruining my day over a simple misunderstanding." I smiled at the wall. "Good luck with your day, Jessica." I pressed-end. The phone started ringing again almost immediately. I switched it to silent, placed it in a drawer, and walked away. I had no intention of participating in a screaming match. The next few hours were delightfully peaceful. I made myself a sandwich, watched an old movie, and started mapping out the kitchen remodel. When I finally checked my phone later that afternoon, I had 14 missed calls and a stream of frantic text messages. "Liam, Mom, please pick up. We don't have the money to rebook all of this." "Liam, Jess is crying. Her parents can't cover the deposits you lost us." "Liam, why are you being so vindictive? We just wanted one dinner to ourselves." I typed out a single reply. "You are 30 years old. If you want a luxury wedding, you can pay for it yourselves. Do not contact me with this tone again." I locked the screen. The reality of their situation had finally hit them. Without my credit card holding up the entire foundation, their grand plans had completely collapsed. The following afternoon, I was pulling weeds in the front flower beds when a silver sedan came speeding up my street, parking haphazardly against the curb. I stood up, dusting off my knees. Liam jumped out of the driver's seat. He looked exhausted. His shirt was wrinkled and he had dark circles under his eyes. Jessica was nowhere to be seen. He walked quickly up the driveway, stopping a few feet away from me. "Mom," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Please, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry about the dinner. Jess's parents paid for the restaurant, and she didn't want to make it awkward with you there. I should have told you. Just, please call Oakwood. They said if we pay in full by tomorrow, we can keep the date." I looked at my son. He wasn't apologizing because he missed me, or because he felt bad for hurting me. He was apologizing because his venue was slipping away. "I don't have the money, Liam," I said simply. Liam stared at me, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean you don't have the money? You got the refunds, I know you did. Oakwood told me they processed it." "I do have my money," I clarified, picking up my gardening trowel. "But it is no longer available for your wedding. I'm remodeling the kitchen." His jaw actually dropped. "You're remodeling the kitchen with my wedding money." "It was never your money, Liam. It was mine," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "I offered it as a gift." "But gifts are given out of love and mutual respect. You showed me exactly how much respect you have for me when I stood on your porch in the freezing cold after driving 7 hours." Liam dragged a hand down his face in frustration. "Jess was right. You're just trying to control us. You used the money to hold us hostage, and now that you didn't get your way, you're punishing us." I let out a slow, tired breath. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. "I'm not punishing you," I replied softly. "I'm setting you free. You and Jessica don't want me around, and that's perfectly fine. You are adults. You have your own lives. But being an adult means you don't get to treat people like garbage and still expect them to foot your bills." He stood there, shifting his weight, desperately searching for a counter-argument. But there was none. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't crying. I wasn't giving him any emotional reaction he could use against me. "So that's it?" he asked bitterly. "You're just going to abandon us?" "I'm going inside," I said, turning my back on him. "Wait here." I walked into the house, my boots echoing lightly on the hardwood floor. I went straight to the entryway table where the heavy wooden box had sat untouched since my drive home. I picked it up and walked back out the front door. I stepped off the porch and walked over to where Liam was still standing, pouting like a teenager whose allowance had been cut. I held out the heavy wooden box. He looked at it warily. "What is this?" "This is what I brought you for the engagement dinner," I said. "Take it." He hesitated, then reached out and took the heavy box. It dipped slightly in his hands, the weight of the solid oak catching him off guard. Inside is your great-grandmother's quilt, my wedding pearls, for Jessica, and your grandfather's pocket watch, I explained smoothly. These are your family heirlooms. They belong with you now. Liam stared at the box, his expression softening just a fraction. "Mom, Take good care of them," I interrupted. "They survived a lot of hard times, mostly because the people who owned them knew how to appreciate what they had." I didn't wait for him to respond. I turned around and walked back up the porch steps. "Mom, wait!" Liam called out, clutching the box to his chest. "How are we supposed to pay for the wedding?" I paused at the front door, my hand resting casually on the doorknob. I looked back over my shoulder. The afternoon sun caught the silver in my hair, and for the first time in years, I felt incredibly tall. "That sounds like a wonderful problem for close family to solve," I said. I walked inside, shut the door, and turned the deadbolt with a satisfying metallic click. Through the window, I watched him stand in my driveway for a long time, staring at the closed door. Finally, he trudged back to his car, placed the box in the passenger seat, and drove away. I walked straight into my kitchen, grabbed the contractor's catalog, and started circling marble countertops. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt entirely mine. 3 months later, my house was unrecognizable in the best way possible. The outdated laminate counters were replaced with a stunning white quartz. The cabinets were freshly painted, and sunlight poured into my new modern kitchen. It cost exactly what the catering and venue deposits had totaled. I hadn't spoken to Liam or Jessica since the day he stood in my driveway. I heard through my sister that they ended up getting married in a local public park with a buffet provided by a cheap barbecue restaurant. Jessica's parents had refused to pay for a luxury venue at the last minute. I didn't receive an invitation, and frankly, I didn't want one. Some people in the family gossiped. A few cousins told me I was too harsh, that a mother should always forgive. But I stopped caring about their opinions the moment I stopped funding their convenience. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and walked out to the back porch. The weather was warming up and my garden was blooming beautifully. I sat down in my wicker chair, resting my feet on the railing. I didn't hate my son. I hoped he and Jessica had a good life together. But I had finally learned the difference between loving someone and letting them use you. I spent decades being the silent foundation, holding up the walls of everyone else's lives. Now, I was just enjoying the view from my own house. My phone buzzed on the side table. It was a text from an old friend asking if I wanted to join her for a weekend trip to the coast. I picked up the phone, smiled, and typed, "I'd love to." I set the phone down and took a sip of my tea. The air was fresh, my bank account was secure, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting on anyone else. Everything was exactly as it should be.